Another anonymous, an unnamed FBI special agent, is defending his colleagues who investigated the insurrection as Donald Trump prepares to boot the men and women who did their duty from their jobs. CNN has obtained this letter, and it is unsparing. It's entitled, "Uncommon Sense Was a Common Vice." The author offers what he or she calls a vignette, free of political bias or moral judgment. The document runs through a job history, and a prolific one at that, preventing ISIS attacks, securing a hostage from the Taliban, listening to wiretaps to help take apart a violent drug gang, recruiting a source to provide intel on Putin's military, infiltrating a child trafficking operation, monitoring deep cover spies. In other words, take these words seriously. Quote, "Currently, there is an effort to call a significant number of career special agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigations. This is an unthinkable action that will gravely undermine the security of the nation." And these two, about the uncertainty of what happens now. Quote, "I am now sitting in my home, listening to my children play and laugh in the backyard, oblivious to the prospect that their father may be fired in a few days, fired for conducting a legally authorized investigation, fired for doing the job he was hired to do. I have to wonder, when I am gone, who will do the quiet work that is behind the facade of your average neighbor?" It's a really powerful letter, and just to underscore it, it's an amalgamation of the types of people who work at the FBI who are now all in the crosshairs, thousands and thousands of them who may have just touched a piece of paperwork that ended up in the January 6th investigation.
We all saw what happened January 6th. This is the part that I'm really struggling to understand. I'm struggling to understand how anyone could position that as if that was right, as if it was not worthy of investigation, as if the FBI was wrong to do its job and investigate what was obviously a crime that all of us watched happen in real time.
And actually, I mean, don't you remember when Mitch McConnell basically said a criminal investigation is the means to get justice for what happened on January 6th?
Yeah, there was a time that a lot of Republicans came to the table. And so let's also remember that Kevin McCarthy and other Republicans went to the floor within 24 hours of the insurrection and said, this is a problem. Donald Trump needs to stop this. He needs to stop this behavior. The fact that this is happening, Abby, look, this is something that Donald Trump said he was going to do on the campaign trail. He was going to, quote unquote, get rid of the deep state. He was going to punish people who were who were investigating January 6th. He said he was going to do this. But now we're actually seeing this come to fruition. And Americans should be very alarmed about this. I think we're just at the beginning. This letter, I can guarantee you, we're going to see more and more of this. I have plenty of friends who worked at the Department of Justice and the FBI during the Biden administration. They know very well people who are terrified
and the fact that
and
this
who are about to
letter
lose
has
their
to be
jobs.
written anonymously because obviously they're afraid that they're going to lose their jobs, which will probably happen. He's doing exactly what he said he would do, and I know there are a lot of people who were rooting him on because, as you point out, 76 million people voted for him. But the reality is that this is a very despicable and disgraceful thing that is happening, and I almost feel like who is defending these people who are being attacked? I know there are these last minute, and I don't want to jump on the Democrats, and I know there are these last minute court orders and people are taking people to court, but I feel as if they're putting it on the people that are being actually threatened and attacked. And they're like, here you go, figure that out. There's no way to actually fight what's happening in real time because it's never happened.
CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller joins us now. So, John, with those names now in the hands of the DOJ, what happens next?
Well, that is the question. Remember, Pam, this is where the FBI was asked to provide this information instead of providing names because they were concerned of what would occur with these identities. They provided the unique employee identification numbers so that if there was some matter that made them want to need a specific name, that number could be run. But now that they've turned over the names, the question is what does happen next? In other words, the executive order for ending weaponization of the government says that this information is supposed to be gathered, processed, and sent to the Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House, not the Attorney General, not the Inspector General of the Justice Department. So from a political standpoint, what are their operators going to do with it? Are they going to run the names of 5,000 FBI employees against voter registration records to figure out who's a Republican, who's a Democrat? Are they going to use those names to search social media to figure out what someone said within their First Amendment rights in a post. Nobody knows the answer to that, but to be fired or to have sanctions taken against them in their jobs, that has to go through a process which they have delineated none of. So that is the question.
And the Justice Department, for its part, has said that it will not fire agents who acted in, quote, an unethical manner. But clearly, the fear of retaliation hangs over thousands of employees. I want to share an open letter from an anonymous FBI agent. CNN just obtained it, and we've added the voice to that agent's words.
Currently, there is an effort to cull a significant number of career special agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This is an unthinkable action that will gravely undermine the security of the nation, well beyond what many of our citizens are aware. Something else about me: I was assigned to investigate a potential crime. Like all previous cases I have investigated, this one met every legal standard of predication and procedure. Without bias, I upheld my oath to this country and the Constitution and collected the facts. I collected the facts in a manner to neither prove innocence nor guilt, but to arrive at resolution. I am now sitting in my home, listening to my children play and laugh in the backyard, oblivious to the prospect that their father may be fired in a few days. Fired for conducting a legally authorized investigation. Fired for doing the job that he was hired to do. I have to wonder, when I am gone, who will do the quiet work that is behind the facade of your average neighbor?
Wow. You can't help but feel the sense of betrayal there.
Well, and you can't, but let's look at that from the human standpoint, which is these people showed up to work every day. A lot of these people are lawyers, have master's degrees and so on. They could probably be making more and doing more in any other field of life, but they came to the FBI to provide a service. They were assigned to these jobs. They carried them out within the Domestic Intelligence Operations Guide, the DOJ guidelines, the law. How do we know that? We know that because cases were brought to grand juries who found probable cause a crime was committed. Cases were taken to trial. 1,600 investigations for January 6th alone, where 1,000 people ended up pleading guilty in rough numbers. So the process was carried out in a very legal way. Here's one of the great ironies of this, which is the Deputy Attorney General, the acting Deputy Attorney General of the United States of America, who is supposedly one of the top people in an independent Justice Department, is pressuring the FBI for names of people who did what. And if you look at the questionnaire, did you provide analytical support? Did you approve documents? Did you participate in arrests? Or were you on an arrest team? Were you assigned as the case as a supervisor? Emil Bovee, the acting Deputy Attorney General, who is the driver in the Justice Department, being pushed by the driver in the White House, was the Deputy Chief of the National Security Branch in the Southern District of New York. When I was working on the New York Joint Terrorism Task Force after the January 6th case, and my detectives and the FBI agents working with us went across the street to the prosecutors to get search warrants, subpoenas, court orders, Emil Bovee was the Deputy Chief of the section that was actually approving all of those. So his name should be somewhere on that list too, and I don't think a lot of people know that.
That's really interesting, actually. And he was the one that sent that initial request with the subject line termination, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. John Miller, thanks so much.